This is Lunchtime Agenda.
Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Agenda. I'm Laura Jays. The opposition leader Bill Shorten is in Shepparton this afternoon after a 5-day visit to London. Bill Shorten is under pressure at the moment to offer bipartisan support into a looming what is seen as an announcement in the next few weeks of a royal commission into all union activity. And the government, it seems, continues to push its IR agenda by stealth. Also today is a cabinet showdown looming between the Liberal and the National Party over farming assistance, farmers affected by the drought. To talk about all these issues and more today, joining me from Brisbane is Labor MP Graham Perrott, and joining me from Canberra is Liberal MP Peter Hendy. Now, Graham Perrott, first to you. Bill Shorten is heading straight to Shepparton after his trip to London. What is he going to say to workers, and why is he going out to Shepparton straight away?
Well, obviously manufacturing jobs, particularly in the agricultural sector, are very important. I've always believed that Australia should be able to produce and value add to our wonderful food and livestock. So Bill Shorten, as a former union organiser, understands how hard people work in factories like at Shepparton. Now, I'll tell you what he won't be saying. He won't be saying you people on an average of 50 grand a year are being paid too much, which the disgraceful Minister of Vet said yesterday. Well, that has come up in the last day or so, hasn't it, Graham Perrott? The enterprise bargaining agreements for SPC workers at this factory, entitlements like 9 weeks of paid leave, 5 days off over Melbourne Cup, and wages 38 to 58% above the award. Is that too generous for a company that's asking for help from a federal government? Well, I'll say this. Employers and employees, when they strike an agreement, an enterprise bargaining agreement, will always be above the award. That's the first point. The employer sits down and agrees with what it can pay. Now, my understanding is, on average, they'll be making $50,000, which is below the average wage, and a long way shy of the $350,000 that Minister of Vets would be getting, or the $500,000 that Prime Minister Abbott are getting. So for them to attack the workers at Shepparton on the production line is farcical. What we should be talking about is the importance of manufacturing jobs in the food industry and in regional areas like Victoria. We've already seen that sector hard hit down in Tasmania. So if we are going to be a country that exports foods around the world and rather than just brings in every processed food, we need to be able to support certain industries, and I'm sure Bill Shorten will be talking to the bosses and to the workers to make sure that everything that the government can do is being done. Okay. Because remember that if once these skills go and we can only rely on imported foods, and I am biased, I have SPC product every morning for breakfast, I think that will be a tragedy.
And Peter Hendy, what do you have for breakfast? And also, is there a broader agenda at play here for the government? And is that industrial relations? Is this a part of that agenda in encouraging employees to clamp down on union concerns, union demands, I should say?
Well, to the direct point, this has been well canvassed in the media in the last 2 weeks, is that the Coca-Cola Amatil, which is the owning company of SPC Ardmona, is a very, very wealthy company. In the first 6 months of the last financial year, they made $200+ million after tax. They need to get their house in order before they come to the government asking for $25 million. And that's what the government said. So they said, look, we've had a look at your enterprise agreement. We think it's fairly excessive. We want you to address that, and I think that's a reasonable point for the Cabinet to make.
So, Peter Hendy, looking at the enterprise bargaining agreement, as I understand it, this was negotiated a few years ago. Are you saying that there needs to be a bit of flexibility, perhaps, when times change for a company? Does there need to be a clause in which the enterprise bargaining agreement and the entitlements for workers also change?
Well, I think if the company is going to come to the taxpayer and asking for multi-millions of dollars, they need to have their house in order before they do that. They need to have done everything they can to boost their own balance sheet and make that a viable proposition. Now, Coca-Cola Amatil are saying that they've got a plan. Well, let's see them implement their plan before they come to the taxpayer. Because, you know, I have across my electorate, I have a rural electorate, by the way, I have across my electorate hundreds of small businesses which are challenged by economic circumstances. They're not coming to the taxpayer asking for a handout, and this is an akin situation. The fact is that we expect business to stand on their own 2 feet. The Commonwealth Government needs to get out of the way where it can to give them the best opportunity to compete and to be a successful business. But we can't just go around handing out money willy-nilly. One of the principal reasons we won the federal election was because the general population thought that the budget was out of control, that the Labor government in the last 6 years did not adequately do the cost-benefit analysis on a whole range of issues, and this is what we're doing now. That's what we're doing.
Well, looking at some of the comments from Joe Hockey today, Peter Hendy, he's again repeated his mantra of the age of entitlement is over. This is now the age of personal responsibility. Now, as you mentioned, you have quite a large electorate over that takes in regional areas and rural sectors as well. Now, does this personal responsibility apply across the board, or is there a case-by-case basis here? I'm just trying to work out where the line is for any industry assistance.
Well, I mean, there's the Cabinet has to set in place a framework, and what we're sending out a message on is that we're not going to be a group that just hands out money without proper cost-benefit analysis to prop up businesses that then around the corner say they're going to leave the country, all those sorts of things. And that's what we're saying. We're going to do this deliberately, methodically, in a proper government processes to decide each case if it comes before us, but we're signalling that you have to have a damn good argument if you're going to get taxpayer funding.
Okay, I'm going to return to the argument that farmers have been putting forward to Barnaby Joyce over the weekend, but staying on unions for the moment, a Royal Commission into all union activity is likely to be announced by the Abbott government in a number of weeks. Bill Shorten will no doubt be asked about this in about 20 minutes' time, but this was Kate Ellis this morning.
We certainly support accountability. It was under our government that we brought in the biggest reforms to the accountability of union finances that this country has ever seen. We certainly support these allegations being investigated, and we think that the police are the best people to do that. Now, we would absolutely back a full inquiry, and as I said, make sure that those who are deemed to be responsible are held to account, because they are giving a lot of people a bad name.
Now, Graham Perrott, after the latest claims of union corruption on construction sites, we've seen Craig Thompson, the HSU, also Williamson tied into that. Are you afraid that the public support is already with the Abbott government for a Royal Commission, and why won't Labor support it?
I'll make these 2 points. Firstly, we have a Royal Commission on foot at the moment into child abuse. Now, that should be adequately funded. We've already had Justice McClellan indicate that they're going to need more resources, and we know that it is detailing every day crimes that have occurred. So if we're going to put money into anything that is worthwhile in terms of a Royal Commission, that's where the money should go. The second point is, like Kate Ellis, like every member of the Labor Party, I find any misuse of union funds completely abhorrent, distasteful, and the full force of the law should slam down on such offenders. But I think the Australian people understand this. They would never judge the actions of the many by the abhorrent behaviour of a few.
Yeah, sure, Graham Perrott, that is a fair point to make. But from the Cole Commission inquiry in 2005, that commission found that police and other enforcement bodies are notoriously reluctant to pursue investigations, especially in the industry, because there's bullying. So why not, one, allow the reintroduction of the ABCC, give it another chance to work, and in light of recent allegations into HSU and the misuse of members' funds, why not have another Royal Commission into this so you clear the air?
But Laura, obviously these things are working. This is today's Courier Mail. You know, we have we have a criminal code. We've got investigative powers. It is working. Craig Thompson has been, had a spotlight put on him. We increased the penalties under the Fair Work Act. We do want a clean industry. It's sort of like bent coppers and good coppers. Good coppers are most passionate about tracking down bent coppers. Likewise, the Labor Party is most passionate about stomping down on anyone that's misusing workers' money in a union.
What's wrong with supporting a Royal Commission then?
Because we've just had the Coal Commission that's looked into this. We've got lots of powers there at the moment. Look, if they can show a need, but rather than just start this whispering campaign and with that hiding that greater industrial agenda, the agenda that I noticed Peter Hendy refused to answer your question in terms of whether the government should be able to unpack an enterprise bargaining agreement, an agreement that is normally struck at least every 2 or 3 years. That's when the boss and the employee sit down and say what works for us, what can we afford.
Okay, I just want to go to Peter Hendy on this Royal Commission first. Sorry to interrupt you, Graham Perrott, but Peter Hendy, is it not true that the Prime Minister at least appears to be running a two-pronged strategy here, perhaps over 2 terms, attack the unions and slowly implement workplace changes? In part of the argument that we saw against giving that money to SPC, we heard Eric Abetz and Tony Abbott both say they need to get their houses in order, and both citing the enterprise bargaining agreements. Is this not pursuing IR policy by stealth, perhaps?
By stealth, I can't see. Doing radio and TV interviews isn't doing something by stealth. The fact
no, but you accept my point of a two-pronged strategy here.
Well, what I do know is that we said before the election we would do a review of industrial relations through the Productivity Commission, and that's coming up at some stage. Cabinet needs to sign off on terms of reference. The Royal Commission issue, we did say before the election we would have a judicial inquiry into the AWU scandal. Since the election and before the election, we saw problems with the HSU. We've heard about problems with the CFMEU only recently and connections with bikies. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. We don't have to just have one Royal Commission. We can have a Royal Commission into union activity, and if the Prime Minister wants to expand the terms of reference, I would agree with that, because there are systemic issues that need to be dealt with. And one of the guys who know a lot about this, Nigel Hotchkiss, who was the former director of the Australian Building and Construction Commission before it was abolished by the Labor Party, said that you can't rely on the police to do this, because in his 10 to 15 or 20 years involvement in the construction industry, there's virtually been no police investigations that proceeded. And so this is one of the reasons why the ABCC...
That was the problem of the Coal Commission, wasn't it? That it didn't actually lead to any arrests or of the like. It was more broader based.
No, the ABCC was then created, and then prosecutions occurred under the ABCC. And what the Labor Party did, because of the influence of their mates, particularly the CFMEU, they abolished the ABCC. It was an entity, it was a tough cop on the beat in the construction industry that delivered $6 billion a year of productivity benefits for our Australian economy. Okay. These guys, the Labor Party, Graham and his mates, are standing in the way as a roadblock to major economic reform. The bill's in the Parliament. They could pass it when we sit in February, and only 2 weeks from now, and I think it should go through the Senate, and we can get the ABCC done. And then once the ABCC is done, we can look at the other issues.
So no part of this, Peter Hendy, is this an attempt to weaken the institutional base of the Labor Party? I'll ask you one more time. Would this really provide cover for pursuing the IR agenda as well?
Look, we're dealing with policy here. This isn't about politics.
So there's no politics that play into this at all?
Let's deal with the policy. The policy is that there are major corruption scandals occurring in the union movement, in the principal unions, the HSU, in the CFMEU, potentially the AWU. They need to be dealt with for the sake of the Australian economy.
Okay, Peter
and
Hendy,
that's important.
Graham Perrott, we are going to take a quick break here on Lunchtime Agenda, and when we come back, we'll be looking at the issues that Barnaby Joyce has been pursuing over the weekend. Stay with us.